Hey, Sally.
Hi. We have one person so far.
Cool.
Should play some music or something. Get started. Welcome. We'll get started in about maybe 2 minutes. We'll give people a chance to get in. My name is Sally. I'm with the College of Engineering at UNL, and I'm here with Engineering Ambassadors. They do K-12 outreach to the schools, and today we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk. We're going to do. We're going to make paper airplanes. So take it away, ambassadors.
Yeah, so I'm Ian Gonovati. I'm a biological systems engineering student at UNL. And hopefully you're able to catch our first. We'll talk about flight, but we're going to be making some paper airplanes today, me and Sophie.
Yes, and I'm Sophie, and I'm also a biological systems engineering student at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Yeah, so we're going to be making a couple of different ones today, and then I think we're going to share a site with you guys that has a ton of designs if you want to keep going after this session ends. But I'll start, and we'll just do maybe one that you've seen before here, and I'll put the instructions on the screen. That way it's easy to follow along. So yeah, this one is going to be the basic dart. So hopefully you can see the instructions. I'm going to try to put my screen down here so you can see my paper too, so you can see both. So we're just going to go step by step. So we're going to start how most of these paper airplanes start, pretty simple. We're just going to fold it in half here. So step one, and I'm going to go right along with you. That way we don't go too fast here or too slow, hopefully. So yeah, fold that paper in half, the long way, the hot dog way.
Or vertical. We've been told you guys are going to do that.
Yeah, vertical, not hot dog. Times are changing. Put a nice tight crease on there, you know. I like to use a little bit to get that nice and firm. All right, so now at this point we should have just folded it in half right here. And then we're going to take the two corners, the top two corners, and you're going to fold that corner into that middle crease that you just made. So it's going to make like a nice triangle here. So bring one corner in, do the same thing, make a nice crease on the edge there, and then do the same thing with the other end here. Cool. All right. So now we're through these first two steps. So we should have, right, paper that can fold in half, and then we have these two kind of flaps at the top that can come in. All right, so we're well on our way. Just a few more steps here. It's all going to come together. So we're going to fold in the edges again. So now we kind of have these like bottom corners of our of this kind of like new edge that we've made. So hopefully you guys can see that. I'm looking at this corner right here. So I'm going to take that one, and then I'm going to pull that one in flat. So if you can see, this one maybe is the trickier fold if you haven't done this before. We're going to go from having what we have right now with these two corners folded in, and then we're going to bring this edge that we just made in and make it flat against the center. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully we can all see that. So it'll look something like that. Right angle there, something like that. And then do that same thing with the other end. Just bring that edge in, line it up flat against the middle. All right, now we should have something that looks, you know, getting pretty close here. Something that looks kind of like a hang glider or something like that. All right, so we can go to the next steps here. So we're only 2 steps away. So now we're just going to fold the plane in half again. So we kind of already made that crease. But just fold it in half again, make sure that everything lines up, kind of flatten it down. So now we have this nice structure. And then the last thing is just to add our wings. And so on each side, fold down that half so that it's in line with the bottom of the body. That's what I usually do here. And so I'm just going to line this up. And then once again, just make a nice tight crease here. And then same thing on the other side, make it nice and even. All right, and so you should have hopefully something that looks like kind of like your classic paper airplane. I think this is one that a lot of people are more familiar with. So this one's just called the basic dart. Kind of looks like a dart. You kind of get that idea. If you guys got lost at any point, just put a question into the chat and we can go back and go over steps again. Feel free to do that. But yeah, if you've made this one, if you're ready, you know, at home, you can test it out. You can chat us too and let us know how it works. So I don't know how much. I'm in kind of a small room here, but you know, you can kind of see some decent flight there, right? You're going to be propelling it with your hand. And so I want to take a second here too to point out this website down here, foldandfly.com. So I'll put this in the chat. That way, if you guys want to check it out, you can. But this has a ton of other ways that you can build paper airplanes. Some of them are pretty cool. A lot of different designs. We're going to go over another one today, but if during this presentation you want to take a look at one and maybe walk through it with us, or ask us to walk through it, or if you want to just take a look at it after this, yeah, check that out. So I'm going to pass it over to Sophie now. She's got another design to show you.
Yes, so then there's what?
I'll come back to this at the end too.
Okay, so yeah, don't get rid of this one because there's actually a different way that we can create that thrust force. If you guys were with us earlier in the day, thrust is one of those forces that we have to make the airplane go forward. So just set that one aside for now, but now we're going to start on a different kind of paper airplane called the stable. Do the same thing, move my computer down a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see it. So we're going to start the same way we started the dart. We're going to fold it in half, the hot dog or vertical, whichever way you've been taught. So we'll just have this. And then we'll also do the same thing that we did for the dart. Take that top corner, fold it into your middle seam or fold that you have there. Try line everything up, make it straight. Same thing on both sides. So this should look pretty familiar from what we just did. You're just gonna have kind of like a house-like shape now. Can't really see that. But then here's where it starts to change. So now instead of doing a different fold down to that center line, we're actually just going to fold this down. So right on that straight line you kind of have with those top two folds, fold your point down to your center. So now it's kind of like an envelope. You can see it like that. And then now we're going to fold, you have kind of like a square now. You're going to take those top two corners of your little square, and then you're going to fold it about 1 inch down this line, your center line that should still be there. It's looking a little bit goofy here. There we go. So it should kind of look something like this. Mine's a little bit different from the picture. It's a little bit easier to see it on the screen probably than what I have here. So then hopefully you guys have that. Or you can also pull up that website that we have in the chat if you guys can see it. You'll be able to go to the next one. Or I'll let you guys probably try to follow that a little bit more. This is a little bit more of a complex one I see. Right. Now that you have this, you're actually going to fold that little center corner that was kind of your envelope from before. You're going to fold that up. So it should go over your two little folds that you had from earlier. Something like that, if you can see it. This is folded upwards now. When you continue on, you kind of just, this is up, you can flip it down now. We're just going to have to fold it in half again, right on that center line that we had from before. Then it'll kind of be a trapezoid kind of shape if you have it this way. And then once again, you're going to also fold those wings down so they are flat. Give it some actual wings here. I think I might have gotten one step a little bit goofed up, but it will look something like this or on the screen. So it's going to be a little bit more of like a thicker kind of airplane than just the basic dart that we have on there, kind of for comparison. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit wider than dart.
You go through step 7 again?
Step 7, yes. These wings down, so you'll have something like this. Just going to be folding those down to that bottom crease. So if you fold one of them down, you're still going to have one of them up, and one of them will be folded down to that bottom line that we have. And do the same thing on both sides. This one's going to fly a little bit different than your basic dart, but have you guys tested out as well? If you have any room in your house or wherever you're at.
Why is it called a stable?
I'm not 100% sure, I guess, on the name, but I think, at least based on how it flies, you can kind of see it flies a little bit more straight, it's a little bit more stable than other ones that we have. See Sally's work there.
Worked very well.
But it flew, right?
Great.
And then so you can test all of these out again. Maybe you want to change your folding a little bit. Maybe you want to make it a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. These are all kind of things that you can change a little bit. Also with like the engineering design process, you always have to keep improving and keep asking yourself questions on how you can make it better. So these are things you can even just ask when you're making a basic airplane.
Different types of paper might work better for you guys too. So, thicker paper might be a little bit easier to have a nice stable airplane. It's going to fly a little bit further. And one thing that I wanted to show you guys here, now that you've made both these airplanes, because there's something else we can add on, is going to be this airplane catapult. So you can actually do this on either airplane. On this one, it's on the Dart, but you can do it on any airplane you make, basically. So we're going to take a look at this video here. Let me get out of here. All right. So I'm not sure if you guys can hear the sound. Cool.
Ian, we can't really hear it. At least I can't hear
Sorry about that. Well, he's talking about some concepts we mentioned earlier in our first presentation. He's talking about lift, which is what causes an airplane to fly, and he's going to talk about thrust. But I'll just kind of hopefully talk through some of the more important parts of this really quick, and you can just kind of take a look at how he's going to be making this airplane. And then I'll show you myself too on my video. So he's going to make a catapult, which is going to be a different way to add some thrust to our airplane. So normally we just throw it, right? That's how we propel our airplane with thrust. And so in this case, we're going to use a rubber band. And so what he's doing is he makes a hole in the bottom of his airplane. He puts this rubber band through and kind of makes this slingshot sort of thing on the bottom that he can use to fling his airplane. And so you can see how well that might work as opposed to just throwing it. So I'm going to get rid of this screen recording so you guys can see a little bit better and just show you with the dart that I made. So I just kind of made a hole here a second ago. And so if you have a pair of scissors, you can just make a small cut and then try to kind of expand it or something. I just used a pencil and poked through, so that'll work pretty well too. So see, just on the bottom of my airplane where normally I'd hold it, I just made a hole. And it doesn't make a huge difference exactly where you put it, but I would say don't try to get too far back because you're going to have room to pull it, and you don't want to have it too far back or you're going to bend up your airplane. So you can see I put it maybe about a third of the way up. So I just have this hole here. And then you're going to take a rubber band if you have one, and we're going to put it through just kind of flat like this through the hole that we just made. And if it's kind of hard to get it in there, just use your pencil and push that through a little bit. So it's going to take me just a second here to get that, but I just kind of poked it through with my pencil. pull it through with your hands. This is another case where having a little bit of thicker paper might be kind of nice. I'm using some thin paper here, but I think it'll still work out. And so you can kind of see I've gotten this rubber band halfway through my paper airplane here. And so all you're going to do is take this longer end and then tuck it through the loop on the other side. So you can see I'm taking this long end here, and I'm going to put it through this loop and then just kind of like knot it almost. So I'm going to kind of tighten that up, try to be gentle with my airplane here. And we're left with something that should kind of look like this. So it's just one end of your rubber band going through the loop you just made. Sally's following along. Thank you, Sally. And then what you'll be able to do is hold your airplane, probably pretty close to where you inserted that rubber band, and then you can pull back in here. I'll try to give you another demonstration here in the space that I have. So I'm going to be holding the rubber band with my thumb, and then you can see it's secured pretty well. And this paper is a bit thin, so I can't pull too hard, but if you had cardstock or something like that, you could probably really let this thing fly. And then I'm going to pull back, and it kind of went. I got to practice a little bit. Let's give it another try. I feel like I can do better. There we go. That was pretty good. All right, so that went all the way across the room. So that's a little bit maybe of an easier way than just throwing. You can be a little bit more accurate and precise with it too. You know, if you're throwing it, you might not be consistent, but if you can just kind of pull back every time, it can be the same. So give that a try on either one of those airplanes that we just showed you. You can also try putting the rubber band a little bit farther back, a little bit closer, different sizes of rubber band, different types of paper. There's a lot of room here to innovate and to try some different things. So if you joined us for our first talk, we talked about the longest paper airplane flight, which was 29.1 seconds. So maybe experimenting with some of these things, you can try to beat that or get close to it. And definitely check out that site that we put in the chat, foldandfly.com. They have a lot of different designs. So there's tons of different ways to make an airplane, or try to make up your own. You know, there's a lot of room for doing different things here. So feel free to put any questions in the chat right now if you want us to go over either of those airplanes again, or if there's one that you found on Fold and Fly that we could all take a look at really quick. But yeah,
I don't know if they can type in the chat or not, but maybe you just want to, if they were here for the last presentation, or if they weren't here, maybe you could just go through all the different forces of flight. Just review the four forces.
Oh yeah, sure. So I can maybe do one, then I'll throw it over to Sophie to do another. We can share the glory here. So yeah, there's four very important forces when you're looking at an airplane, looking at flight, and so these are important for your paper airplane too. So a force that I just mentioned kind of a lot was thrust. So I'll start with that one. So thrust is really important, and that's the force that we can essentially think of moving our airplane forward. So I'm actually going to grab my paper airplane here as a teaching aid. That way we can look at it. So if we're thinking about our force here, right, our thrust is what's going to be moving our paper airplane forward. And so that's what I was saying earlier, you know, we're looking at throwing a paper airplane, that's how we're giving it thrust, right? It's that forward motion. When we use this rubber band, it's the same kind of idea that we know we need to get this airplane moving forward. Even though it flies up in the air, the way we kind of get that started is by this forward motion. And so when you look at like a commercial airplane, like something you might get in, fly somewhere when you're going on vacation, what's actually giving it thrust there is going to be propellers, these kind of big turbines that you see. They're really loud things, you know, that start up and then get the plane moving, you know, before it takes off. And so thrust is a really important force that's going to just get our plane in motion and kind of play into some of these other forces.
Yeah, then another force that helps planes to actually get off the ground is going to be lift, and that's going to be kind of that upward force, the one that kind of forces the air underneath the wings. And if you guys weren't here this morning, or yeah, I have a little bit of a demo. If you've seen it again, you might know why it happens. That's always a fun one. So that happens because of the Bernoulli effect, which has to do with lift. It's kind of that upwash and that downwash on airplanes. The air will flow over the wings, and then it will flow down. On a regular airplane, it will flow down over that slanted edge and actually force the plane up. And it also has to do with the difference in pressure. There's low pressure on top and high pressure on bottom. That pressure wants to go from pressure to low pressure, and that's another thing that kind of forces that plane up into the air, and that works on your paper airplanes as well.
Yeah, so thrust and lift are both really important forces that we have to consider that we want to generate with our design, with our airplane, right? But we also have to think about forces in nature that are going to slow down our airplane or stop it from taking off. And so one of those is going to be drag. And this is going to kind of directly oppose that thrust force that I just talked about. And so an easy way to think about drag is if you've ever been, sitting in your car when your parents are driving you somewhere and you stick your hand out the window and it's a nice day and you feel the wind on your arm. And maybe if you're cruising around the neighborhood at like 20 miles an hour, it just kind of feels sort of nice. But if you're going down the highway at like 70 miles an hour and, you want to stick your hand out the window and be a little reckless and you feel that wind kind of throw your arm back like that, you feel a lot of force on your arm. So that's actually going to be that drag force. So it's essentially resistance that you can feel from the air. And it's going to increase the faster you're going, how you can feel that air resistance, that drag on your arm. And so we really have to consider this drag force and how much it's going to slow down our airplanes. And there's different ways that we can kind of minimize the effect of drag. A big one is making things more aerodynamic. So earlier today, we had a cool video of a golf ball and how golf balls are kind of aerodynamic with their dimpled design, and an episode of Mythbusters where they sort of applied that design to a car. So check that out if you're interested. Other ways that you see aerodynamic design being applied is going to be, when you think of like a supercar, like a Lamborghini or a Bugatti or something versus, like a truck, which is going to be a little bit less aerodynamic, but they serve very different purposes. So you can think of sleek curves, a lot of rounded edges and stuff. And so you can think about that too with our airplanes. So considering the Dart maybe versus the Stable, which one seems a little bit more aerodynamic? They're pretty similar, but to me, I think the Dart is a little bit more aerodynamic. It has this kind of sharper, more narrowed front. I think it's going to be able to kind of cut through the air a little bit, whereas the Stable is kind of thicker. It's going to fly more stable for sure, but it might not be able to fly quite as fast because it's going to get slowed down a little bit more by that air resistance, by that drag force.
Yes, the fourth force that acts on an airplane and actually all things on Earth is going to be gravity. It's, like gravity is that force that holds you down on the ground. You're not just floating away or if you jump up, you don't just keep going. Holds you down onto the earth. So this is something that planes have to overcome in order to get themselves up in the air. So gravity is going to be that force that opposes the lift force that I talked about. And so planes are really heavy. There's most planes are going to be around probably 700,000 pounds, which is obviously a lot more than I think any of us weigh. So being able to overcome that gravitational attraction to the ground is something that engineers definitely have to work on in order to do that. But one concept they have to keep in mind is going to be Newton's second law, which is actually force equals mass times acceleration. So they can find that force that the gravity actually acts on the plane by taking the mass of the plane and the acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.81. You won't need to know that unless you keep going in your engineering courses. So being able to overcome that is also another force that or something that also needs to happen in order for planes to be able to get in the sky and take you places. Yeah,
absolutely. And so when you're thinking about building your airplanes, if you think about, later on today, you want to innovate a little bit and try to build one that's going to fly for a really long time, think about all those forces. So you're going to have to design some system or just throw it really hard. So you have a lot of thrust force, right, to get it moving. You want something kind of lightweight. Maybe that's one of the trade-offs is using a heavier, more sturdy material, something like cardstock paper. Maybe it's going to be a bit more stable, but it's also going to weigh a little bit more. So that gravity force is going to bring it down. Think about your design and how much it's going to be, aerodynamic, how much drag is going to be working on it. If you use something like sandpaper, that might have a little bit more drag too. So it might not be a good idea. Nice smooth paper might work a little bit better. And then finally that lift force, how big your wings are, the shape of the wings, and then it also kind of ties into how it's thrown, but making sure that it's going to be able to float, nice and stable, kind of like that Stable design there that has kind of bigger, wider wings in comparison to the body. So keep in mind all those forces. They're the same forces that act on big commercial airplanes, and we can kind of model that here on a smaller scale with our paper airplanes.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for attending, and thank you for the comments in the chat. Glad to hear that the kids really enjoyed it. So
go to that website, hold and apply, and thank you very much for being at our session.
Thank you.